SEO Meetup. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask, even if you are in the live audience here and you're just too shy and don't want to raise your hand, you can send your questions to @SEOMeetup. See what we did there? Same thing. #SEOMeetup, @SEOMeetup. Really easy to remember. Send the questions to @SEOMeetup, and we will get those answered. And if we get the live stream working, during the live stream we also monitor that for questions, so if you're watching from home, you can tweet in questions that way. Speaking of which, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you follow our channels and pages on those various platforms when the live stream is working, I'm working hard at getting that working on a regular basis, you'll be notified when we go live on those platforms. Our venue, this is a nice spot, right? The folks at Oak City Tech are hosting us. So, where's he at? Grego? There he is, kind of hiding. Thank you very much. And that is it for my announcements. So if you guys would like to come on down, we have Newt, Ryan, and Tyler who are going to chat with us about email marketing. And I have a little bit of a surprise for them. You can't have technical difficulties without a whole pile of them. So I told you during lunch that I would have 2 mics for you. We only have one that's working. So you're going to have to share 1 mic and pass it around. But I think you guys are all set?
Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Tyler.
And my name is Ryan O'Shea. I work in marketing operations at Citrix in downtown Raleigh.
Yeah, and I probably should have said that too. So I'm at Bandwidth, and we're a software company over at State Centennial Campus.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about who I was because I wanted everyone to guess, but my name's Newt, and I'm the email marketing manager at Red Hat. So look me up on LinkedIn if you want to connect.
Cool, so real quick, with just like a show of hands, how many people here are B2B? And what about B2C? Okay, cool, and anyone a mixture of both here? Cool, nice. Okay, so we just wanted to get a little bit of an idea, kind of the audience of who we're speaking to. So we have some questions that came out of y'all's annual survey here. So one of the first ones is, what are the best practices when creating email drip campaigns? So I thought that we could kind of start talking to that one and kind of go through this and then open it up to you guys to ask any questions you might have for us. So you want to go first, Ryan?
Sure. So that's a pretty loaded question, and I think the 3 of us could probably talk for a long time on different aspects of that. But the first thing that came to my mind when thinking about best practices for email drip campaigns really has nothing to do with what you put in the email at all. It's not the subject lines, not the headlines or anything like that. I think some of the first best practices that really come to mind is how do you choose who and when you're sending a message to. Email has come a long way from the days of batch and blast, where you have one email that you send to every single email address that you have in your database, and you send it all to them, the same message at the same time. You hear a lot of people saying email is dead these days, and I think while that's not true at all, email like that certainly died a long time ago. So the first thing that I would say when thinking of best practices is really about your targeting of your messaging. So if you have a group of email addresses that you've obtained from some way or another, you probably don't need to send the same message to all of them. So how can you kind of break that group up and send more targeted messages based on things like their demographics? So do you know how big their company is, so if you talk to big companies different from small companies, or maybe more specific things about their engagement with you. Have they ever opened the emails that you've sent to them? I know some of this might be dependent on what your email tools are, but segmenting your emails based on their engagement with you can really go a long way in helping to re-engage with some folks who haven't been clicking on your emails versus continuing the relationship with people who have been engaging with you to really further that relationship and not talk kind of down to them because you're talking to them the same way to people that have never engage with you at all.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that came to mind for me too, is just making sure you know your audience. But then another thing with that is while that email marketing, like he first was describing, is dead, sometimes you do need to send a one-off message to people, like maybe you're doing an event or you're doing a special promotion that, you spun up because of something going on in the news. So it's, related to something. So knowing your audience there and making sure it's relevant for them, but then making sure you have like communication limits set up. So you don't want someone in a drip campaign that's set up to go out that day, and then you send them an email, and then you send them another email right after with your promotion. You're kind of oversaturating them a bit. You're hitting them, maybe twice within an hour, and your messaging kind of loses some of its value because they're like, man, this company's really kind of blowing me up, and maybe I don't want them to reach out to me this much. So I think, personalizing it and then knowing your audience really helps and setting up those limits.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, kind of going all the way back to the beginning, when you're sitting in a room thinking about creating a drip campaign for your business, really think about what is your goal for this campaign? What are you trying to do? I think a lot of marketers get really excited about, let's do some drip campaigns, email, yeah, and then we forget about our ultimate goal. Is your goal app downloads? Is your goal brand awareness? Is your goal product purchases? It could be a transactional email, which means a customer did a transaction, they bought something from you, and then you're following up with a series of emails. It could be triggered, so they did a thing, whether it be transactional or some other trigger, and then they got a series of emails. Or it could just be, customers automatically fall into a drip, letting them know about our other products, like a upsell, cross-sell type of drip. So just knowing your goal and establishing that baseline, really important, as well as who your audience is, of course. And make sure you have something of value to say. Just because we as marketers get all excited and we want to do email drips and automation does not mean we have something valuable to actually give prospects and customers. Sometimes I am guilty of this. But just make sure you have something valuable, because you're asking people to take their time to read something that you sent them. You're asking somebody to give up their email address. You're asking someone to give up space in their inbox. Do you have something valuable to say to them? If that answer is, I don't know, or maybe not, then before you go and create anything, it's time to go back to the drawing board and make sure you have good content for your email drips.
Yeah, and something to add to that about, really just making sure you know your goal. Don't just set a goal and then forget about it. Go back, evaluate, did it work? If that messaging is not working, if that drip campaign is not working, then it's time to refine. It's time to try something different, because at the end of the day, you want to give people value because that's what's going to push them through the buyer cycle for you. So if it's not providing value, you need to reevaluate based on that goal, and then maybe go out and test something or try something new to add some more value to that.
Sure. Actually, I had a couple.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a couple of questions for the audience here today, so to help us get a better understanding of kind of the experiences that you guys have had and maybe some of the challenges that you face. So, can I get a show of hands? Is anybody who their dedicated job is sending emails for email marketing? Nobody, except for 3 of us. Okay, that's not a surprise, and that's something that's helpful for us to, I think, to keep in mind is, for a lot of folks who aren't, working for really large companies like, Red Hat, Citrix, and Bandwidth, this is something that's maybe a part-time part of what you're doing. How about from a number of emails you send in a given period of time? How many of you send, an email for marketing purposes at least once a week? How about more like once a month? Anybody not sending any at all? Trying to get started? Okay. Yeah, that's good. So how about, we've got some, questions on here that kind of, indicate what we're wanting to get at, but can I just, anybody want to shout out, like, what are some of the things that you send emails to do? Like, what are you trying to, is it, driving, one of the suggestions here is driving an event attendance, whether, I guess, either online events or physical events. Does anybody have, just shout out some things that you've done in emails that you're trying to do, content downloads, or buy a product, or read your blog, or anything like that. Educate? Yeah. Events. Okay. Cool. Either you do a lot of event marketing. You want to talk to about that?
Yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah, so I'm part of the dedicated webinar program at Bandwidth as well, so I'm doing a ton of that, so I can talk to that very well as offline events. And so one of the things that I would say is really huge for the webinar, like driving registration, is again, making sure you kind of know your audience to the best of your ability. So if it's a webinar that maybe someone else might find more beneficial for one reason than somebody else, and you know that that's a target persona, if you're able to then say, all right, well, we have a bunch of CEOs in our database, and we also have a bunch of product managers in our database. Well, this webinar is going to be valuable for product managers so much more or in a different way than it is for the CEO. So you can cater that subject line and the email body copy to show the value of that webinar to those people. Obviously, you don't want it to be misleading. You want it to still be what it's about, but you want it to be the way that's going to resonate best with that audience. So doing things like that has really helped us. And then using too many CTAs, like call to actions. That's something that we've tested very big. Does one call to action at the top of the email do better than one at the top and one at the bottom and one in the middle? And the difference, or the real thing is it's going to be different for everybody. So you need to test that and figure out for yourself. But we have found that doing one at the very top of the email in a hero image and then one again at the bottom after the entire webinar description can really drive people to get to that better than just one or three or four, where it's either too little or not enough. So.
Yeah, there's something I was going to jump on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so Tyler brought up the concept of the call to action or something like, I think one thing that it gets, especially if you're not doing email full time and it's kind of a chore to get over and you need to do it, and you finally carve out the time to work on this, it can be tempting to try and throw as many calls to action in a particular email as possible. You want to get all these things across to your customers or prospects. And I would advise to resist that temptation a little bit. I think people are so busy and they spend so much time sifting through emails in their inbox that you've got a split second when they open your email to get your point across. And if you've diluted your message with 3 or 4, we want you to read this, we want you to read that, click on this and click on that, it's going, I think that we found that they ignore that real fast. If you don't make it very clear what it is exactly you want me to do when I read your email, I probably assume it's too much work and I'm going to move on to the next thing in my inbox, because it's hard to get through to that. So I would say, particularly if you're trying to drive attendance at events or really anything, make it very, very obviously clear. This is the number one thing I want you to do when reading this email. Click this one thing, take this one action. That's not to say there can't be supporting messaging in the email, because you might get somebody who is engaged with what you have to say. They click the first one, but they want to check out the other things too. But I think it really needs to be quite clear. This is the one thing we want you to do as a result of this email, and here's some other supporting things if you're interested, but make it clear what that one thing is, or else you're probably not going to get any engagement from them at all.
Yeah, and I used to run a webinar program at this tech startup, and I basically assumed that everybody that I wanted to invite was super forgetful, just like myself. And I would decide on a topic with my colleagues, and we would pick a date, and then I would work backwards from that date. I take my whole email list, and if it was if I needed to target it more, I would, but if it was just kind of like, I think everybody would be interested in this webinar, I would go ahead and send out an invite email 4 to 6 weeks prior. Sometimes 2 invite emails as well. And then once registered, I would exclude that group from the second invite email. If anyone has questions, please stop me. Then I would send out a reminder email to those that have registered 1 week before and the day of, because we're all busy. We're going to register for webinars or events and we're going to forget. So please use your reminders. I don't know how many times I have signed up for something or an event or something and then totally forgot about it, and then I missed it because I never got a reminder email. So in your reminder email, what's really helpful is to have a couple of add to calendar options. You can look up how to do that on just Google, add to calendar. Please include the Gmail and the Outlook options, not just Outlook, because that for Gmail, calendar, Google Calendar users, that's pretty annoying when you're trying to add to calendar and it downloads the ICS file or whatever. Maybe see if there's a significant number of contacts on your list who maybe click the call to action, click that button to register, but then never actually register. And then maybe focus on that group because it's showing some sort of engagement. Maybe there was some reason they forgot to register, or they had the browser page open and just never followed through. So I'd be interested to see how many people actually do that. And then, once again, like the guy said, focus on your messaging. Don't jumble up your messaging. Please put the date, time, location clearly in your email. So many times I've seen webinar invitation emails that did not clearly tell me what time in several different time zones, please, so I don't have to do the math in my head because I'm busy. So all of us are busy. Your customers and prospects are very busy. So when you just make these things very easy, simple, clear, make it so they have to click a minimal number of times, it'll make for a better experience. And then don't forget about your post-event follow-up. Your post-event follow-up is really important. So you can send targeted messages to those who registered, did not attend, didn't register at all. Oh, hey, we noticed you didn't register. Hope you're interested in our next event coming up, or give us some feedback. And then your people that actually did attend. At my old job, I worked closely with the sales team, and they would personally follow up to folks who attended the webinar. Thank you for attending. And that made a really big impact. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, and you have the staff to support it, it really means a lot to people to be personally reached out, as well as an automated message. So I think, yep.
Yeah, so following up to that, where she was kind of like, yeah, sometimes I'd send that email again. If you didn't open that email the first time, and I still deem that it could be relevant to you, you must better believe I'm going to send it to you again with a different subject line. Just because, honestly, maybe you just didn't see it, or that subject line wasn't compelling enough to you, or you were really busy that day. Maybe you were PTO that day, and it just got completely lost in your inbox. So just because, they didn't do it the first time doesn't mean it's not relevant to them. I mean, if they opened it and then didn't do anything, you can go ahead and assume, okay, it probably wasn't their cup of tea. Leave them alone, don't annoy them with it, but I think that's extremely important, and also making sure you have enough lead time prior to events, where she was saying 4 to 6 weeks. And so something I'm actually testing tomorrow, we're starting to promote a webinar tomorrow, so we're about 4 weeks out from it. And I'm going to test, literally, when they click the register now button in the email, it's just going to take them to a landing page. You say, cool, you're registered, you just got a confirmation email. So, as quick as possible. I already have your information, you're in my database, I know who you are, so if I can automate this sign up for you, you've already expressed your interest, you've consented to sign up, done. So that's one thing that could really help, and I haven't tested it yet, but we'll find out after this how good it really does work for me, so just an idea.
Yeah, one thing I'll add on to what Tyler said about that remailing. Try it at a different time of day. If you send all of your emails at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, and some people just consistently never open your emails, it might be because they are busy at that time. They always have meetings, and they're never going to click on yours, and by the time they get to it, it's buried down 30 emails deep. And so if you're going to try that, for the people who didn't open that email the first time, you could try sending it to them at 3 p.m. or something, and then maybe by that time they've cleared out their inboxes for the day, and they're more susceptible to opening something like that. So,
yeah.
Feel free at any time also to ask some questions here. Yeah, going in the back.
What's your preferred email marketing service?
What is our preferred email marketing service?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. I've used a couple in my different, stops along my career. The one that I've spent the most time in is Marketo, and so that's a marketing automation platform. So Marketo and Eloqua are kind of the two big marketing automation platforms. So they do email marketing, yes, but they do a lot more than just that. They have, solutions for landing pages and forms and all of that. So, so whenever you hear people talk about marketing automation, sending email to. So a lot of our emails are actually not that kind of batch and blast. It's based on triggered actions. So if somebody fills out a form on this page, it triggers, being added to this email stream, or if they fill out a contact me form, it triggers an alert to a sales team, but then also sends that end user a confirmation, that sort of thing. So Marketo is my, that's my world. That's where I've spent the most time. I've also, in a past job, spent some time in Toronto, based out of Durham here, as well as Responsis, which is kind of a different style of email marketing tool. It's been a few years since I've used either one of those. But.
So I'm also in Marketo, which is, like a very big, pretty much enterprise platform, and that's definitely my preferred. But if you want to go a step back, I've also used HubSpot, which is less enterprise, and then I've also used MailChimp and GetResponse, and I like all of those a lot. I really like HubSpot. That's also a little more enterprisey, but they have some, smaller business deals. I would definitely say I really like MailChimp though, and MailChimp's come a long way. You can, really build out a lot of stuff in MailChimp for, minimal cost and, really minimal effort to your business. You can build some nurture campaigns. You can kind of, layer in a little bit of triggered stuff. So I would say, depending on your budget, Marketo, HubSpot, MailChimp is kind of where I would be on that.
Hi. I have not used Marketo in a few years, but I remember Marketo being a pretty good solution. We use Eloquent, so I would not recommend it unless you have an entire team running the platform, and it's super enterprise. If you want to give me a little bit more information, I used to be a marketing technologist, so it was my job to find the right tools for my team in marketing and sales. And I would also agree that HubSpot is really great. I, by myself, got it set up and running at a previous employer, and it is super easy to use. They have a really good help library and program, and you may not even need it because it's very intuitive. They also have a free CRM, so if you don't want to go through Salesforce because they will take all of your money and leave you with nothing except tears, then go to HubSpot. Hey, you know what? If you're a small business and you're interested in HubSpot, but you look at their list price and you're like, I can't afford this, call them up. Call them up and say, I'm interested in HubSpot, but I'm not paying this much. Can you make a deal? Call them at the end of a quarter, end of a month. I am not kidding. I worked at a startup where we had to be scrappy. I did this. I was on the phone with sales. I like your stuff, but I can't. We're not going to pay this much. Can you help us out? So call them up. You never know. I'm not sure if MailChimp's really willing to negotiate, but a lot of the marketing automation platforms, the Marketo, I did try to haggle them, and they were not having it as much. But HubSpot definitely, they wanted our business, so they were like, yes. Bronto and Responsis are now Oracle products. So is Eloquent. So Oracle, I don't know if you've heard, is a ginormous company, and they buy up other companies. And so now I don't know if they're willing to negotiate a price, but I used to use Bronto, and it's a good product. If you want to give me more information, I'm happy to make more recommendations. There are so many email marketing platforms right now, so many. I've never, every day I find a new one on the internet. I'm like, oh, this is new. Because when I first got started, we were using Responses, and there was 4 of them. There was ExactTarget, Responses, Blue Hornet, Marketo, and maybe 2 more. But now there's 15,000. So, and all kinds of prices, $5 a month, $20 billion a month. That's not really, but you know what I mean.
Does anyone else have any other? Oh, right here. Yeah.
You guys don't mind talking about the lists. A lot of companies been in business for a while, or even startups, and they literally are starting out at 0. And of course, everyone says don't buy lists, which is fine. But talk to us about maybe some ideas on how to quickly build a targeted list.
Cool, and I would definitely agree on the don't buy list part. I've been places where they bought lists, and I can go ahead and tell you it really didn't end well. So it was great for a little bit, and that
Don't do
went
it.
south really quick. So from experience being in places where they've done it, not a good way to go. It's really not. But so I would say a really good tactic for building lists is if you have a physical location where you're like maybe, I don't know, let's say you're some kind of like a coffee shop or something like that, just random example, you can put out, a clipboard, offer incentives, offer coupons to build your list where people sign up there in your store. But then, if you're kind of more of an internet company, at the end of the day, it's going to be driving people to fill out forms on your website. That's really going to be the best way to do it. So for that, you need to have value props. You need to have things that people want. So knowing your audience, we come back to that again. Well, who's your audience? What are their pain points? And what can you offer to them that they're going to be willing to give up their email address for to get them in your database so you can start to nurture them and start to give them more offers. So, content marketing is huge nowadays. So if you can, and it just starts with one piece. One good piece of content can, be so valuable, where it's like you go to some of these big websites like Marketo, for example, they're lead nurturing like 500-page guide that they do every year. I kid you not, ask you for 20 form fills, like 20 different things. They want to know your physical address. They want to know 3 phone numbers. So if you can get a good piece of content, you're going to get people to give you good information. And then so getting people to that, is spinning up ads is really the way we can do it. That's, obviously you have to have budget to put out some kind of paid search ad or a social media ad. And it also helps to know where is your audience going. So they all read this newsletter every week, all the people who want to buy your product. Well, look at getting that piece of content in that newsletter. Reach out to them. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid. If you can show it's valuable to their readers, they might give it to you for free. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't think there really is a silver bullet that allows you to, and you probably knew that was the answer, to quickly build up a effective email list. While I absolutely agree with the idea of we don't want to buy a list, but there are ways to kind of find that middle ground between okay, I need to get people into my database kind of quickly with allowing that organic content marketing thing to play out, because that is the long game. That's where you're going to get your most valuable long-term contacts from, but that takes time, that takes resources, building out a content library, that takes a lot of effort. One thing I would say to do is to really work on allowing all of your channels to work together and for one another. So your social channels, your Twitter, accounts, have that to support, your content marketing efforts to drive to your pages where you might collect leads. And vice versa, having your emails kind of, connecting people to your social channels to get that engagement there, to give them more than just, email after email. So kind of allowing your channels to work together, and this can include your search. Paid search or even SEO can be a great way to get people into your content pages with forms so that you can capture who they are. It depends on what your target audience is looking for, what are they searching for, and how do we, deliver that to them. Another way that's kind of in that middle ground that's not quite buying lists, but it's if you have some budget to spend on this, it can be media programs or sponsorship programs that are in targeted areas where your ideal customer is going on the internet. So for example, at Citrix, we have a very for our product that I support, ShareFile, we have a very verticalized approach to the way that we sell the product. So we've got sales teams that go after, accounting firms and healthcare firms, and they talk about the product a little bit differently depending on who they're talking to. So in order to generate the leads for them, my team will go where we believe our target accountants are going on the internet for their research. So if you're an accountant and you're saying, what are the top technical tech trends of the year? How do I find that out? They're going to places like accountingtoday.com, and so we, would find places like that to strike up relationships. So we did some sponsorships of Accounting Today webinars, for example, and they are the ones that are the experts in the accounting industry. We don't, we're not experts there, we're experts in our product, but we might say, hey, Accounting Today, we're willing to spend some money to sponsor a technical webinar that you guys put on and you generate your audience for the webinar based on the Accounting Today subscribers, and we allow them to kind of serve up an opt-in and for messaging from us, and say, when we can follow up with them later saying, hey, you attended this webinar, we sponsored it, we're partners with this trusted source that you go to already, and this is how we can help solve a need that you suggest you might have because you went to a tech trends and accounting webinar. Maybe you want to hear about our product and how it's helped solve this this particular problem in in the accounting industry. So that's been one way that we that kind of was our a few years ago, that was our kind of kickstarting our hosted webinar campaign. We didn't have enough leads at that time to spin up our own webinars where we had our own experts speaking about topics. And so in order to get there, we did some sponsoring of these types of webinars that helped build up our list. And then eventually we were able to start hosting our own content and bringing in some internal speakers, some external speakers. But really that was a great way for us to do that. So it was find where your target audience is going for their research, and how how can you insert yourself into that process so that you're aligned with those influencers that they already trust.
I would like to also piggyback on the webinar thing, because I noticed at my old job where I was in charge of webinars, that was a huge source of new leads for us, which is really weird because I wasn't advertising them anywhere. But what was happening was they were getting a little viral and people were sharing them within their organization. And so we would get new signups and new names from the organizations that we were sending to. So we would send to one person at such and such organization, and they would share it with 10 people. So maybe 5 of those people would sign up. So, I mean, we've said it, and we'll say it again, content, good content, valuable content that's relevant is really important. I'm sure sign up for blogs. You give your email address out to get content. And that's how a lot of the marketing thing works. In terms of buying lists, does anybody here do business outside of the US? Anybody send emails to Canada or Europe? You have to be really careful who you can email. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Can-Ban, but our email regulations in the US are probably some of the most lax. I can mass market email anybody, and I only have to put my address in the footer and have an unsubscribe link that works. But they don't ever have to opt in for me to email them. Canada and Europe, I would say most of Europe, but not all, have much more strict regulations. So if you are buying a list, I just had this happen to somebody in my organization. They bought a list and then we told them, sorry, you can't really email these people. So be very, very careful, because there are unscrupulous list people, agencies, brokers, who will say, yeah, I got a list for you. And then, but when you really look into it, you're not allowed, due to regulations that will put you out of business or in jail. So be very careful. Read about the email marketing laws. The Canadian ones are some of the most complex and strict. And I literally had to draw like a flow to try and understand, okay, if this and this and this, okay. And I'm still very confused. So if there's somebody you can talk to that does this, maybe a lawyer, if you have questions, definitely talk to that person. But from my perspective, just be very careful. I think some people just, oh, I can email anybody. No. Like I said, the US has much more lax laws than Canada and Europe, so just be very careful.
Yeah.
So I agree with all that, absolutely. But the scariest part, I think, about using kind of lists like that don't come from opt-in sources, while the regulations and the laws are definitely scary. But the worst part is that it's going to tank every other contact that you have in your list too. It's going to be like a virus. So if you have good contacts in your database and you start sending to lists that did not opt in to you, you can kiss those inboxes goodbye. You're going to the spam folder. And that's for the good leads that might be not well engaged with you, who always open your emails. They'll stop seeing them because all those other people that have no interest in you, the Gmails and Hotmails and Outlooks, all those email providers, they know when you're sending to lots of different people who have addresses in their, in their systems. So if they know that a lot of people from your email are not getting engaged with, they're going to look out for the rest of their users on your list and say, okay, these people aren't engaging, so we're not even going to show anybody on this list or anybody coming from, from this sender into the inbox. So yeah, the regulations are scary, you don't want to go afoul of the law, but you really also don't want to ruin all of the work that you've done to generate good leads, good contacts in your database, and ruin them with, a wild night with a purchase list. Yes?
So are you talking about they're going to block us as our domain, where it's coming from, the IP address?
Yeah. So yes, that's what I'm saying. It's a combination of the IP address, and if you're on, a MailChimp or if you're not an enterprise level sender, you're probably on a shared IP address at your email provider, which means they will come knocking on your door if you're tanking that shared IP, because you're ruining other companies' ability to land in the inbox too, and they'll know if it was you that was sending this email. But then the inbox, providers, Gmails, they will know that it's your sender domain as well that's doing that. And so if you think that they're watching you on the internet, they're watching the senders on. They know what you're doing. So just across the board, opt-ins and letting people sign up for these things, I think is the absolute best way to go.
Doesn't MailChimp require a double opt-in?
I'm honestly not sure about that, but they might, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the new standard, really, is a double opt-in. That's really kind of where the market's moving, is making sure people double opt into your message. So not only did you download something, but then you said you want me to email you after too, And so that's
Confirms good email address.
Yeah. It confirms it, and it's good for you. It confirms you have a good email address. It confirms your audience wants to hear from you. You're going to see better engagement rates when they actually want to hear from you. But back to what you were saying about them blocking your email. If, say, you use Gmail to send your personal work email, so you have like a domain that is whatever your domain is, but it's powered through Gmail, they're going to shut you down completely. Like, you're not even going to be able to send out a sales contract or like, hi mom, how are you doing email? Like, they're going to say, no, you're doing nothing now. Until you can prove to us you fixed this issue, why did it go wrong, things like that. I mean, it really is going to hurt your business if you get down a hole like that. So,
So can we talk about the blacklists and how to get off of them?
So, to add to that, two things. The first thing is, even if nobody marks your email as spam, low engagement is enough to tank your deliverability. This is really important, because for the longest time it was, well, as long as nobody marks my email as spam, and if they're just not engaging with it, if they're just not opening it or clicking on it, it's fine. It's not fine. Low engagement rate will cause your emails eventually to go into spam automatically. So you don't want a low engagement rate. You want those lists to engage. So when you get that double opt-in, when you get a carefully curated list, you're going to be less likely to get in trouble. So in terms of getting off of the blacklist, we got on a blacklist. I've worked at 2 companies that got on blacklist. The first one we were not using double opt-in, and it was a sensitive content. So Spam House had already had our eyes on us, and we emailed every single day, 365 days a year, to multiple segments. And I was the one in charge of building and sending all emails, and I mean millions of them every day to millions of people. So when we got on a bad email, we were basically baited, because when you don't use double opt-in, anyone can sign up with a trap email address, and so that's what happened to us, and then we got shut down. We were blacklisted and we couldn't send anything. And then my boss had to be on the phone with Spam House, please. So we had a remediation plan. They basically put you on a remediation plan. You can no longer do this. You have to double opt-in. You can't send to this group, you can't send to that group, and I'm sure that John can speak more to that, but what happened to us it was a year ago this month, a bot hit one of our forms, and it was an old legacy form, and it had not been updated, and we ended up on a Spam House blacklist, and we couldn't send anything out for 25 hours until we fixed it. And basically rolled into a bunch of cascading events for us where we rolled out double opt-in, and we stopped supporting bot lists, and we agreed we would warm up contacts first instead of just like hitting them with messages right away. So it really changed the way we do email marketing because we got slapped. But you should.
I mean, anything for me, I'm looking at like, you know, anything below like 28%, I'm really not happy at all. You know, I'm kind of, do what? 28, yeah. So I'm kind of like, what's going on here? But my stuff's super segmented.
It'll make me happy.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, all right, I know that you're interested in these products based on you've done this, this, and this, so we're going to go here. So I mean, and granted, that's above my industry standard by quite a few percentage points. So it really becomes down to figuring out what your baseline is, and then figuring out what you can do to personalize that message, improve it, is what I would say.
Yeah, it really depends on your business and, you know, what your target audience is. So if I'm looking at our prospect email, so these are people that are, you know, in our nurtures, you know, they're not yet customers, they've not signed up for a trial, but they probably downloaded our content somewhere, they got into our database, and we're sending them weekly, you know, educational content emails. We're probably looking at, you know, 18 to 22% open rates, and somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, of the people that open those emails, maybe, you know, 15 to 20% of them actually click on the email and follow through and do the action that we're asking for. If I look at my, you know, new customer onboarding, these are people who just bought the product, and we're sending them emails talking about, you know, welcome to the family and here's how to get the most out of the product. You know, if we're getting anything less than like 40% open rates, then we think that, you know, we need to do some adjustment on those. So it really depends on, you know, who you're targeting, where they are, and their relationship with your business.
You have an offer in your email.
Yeah. You want to keep on that?
Yeah, that's when I have one thing. And I also operate under a less is more thing too. So like if you're not engaging, I'm going to send you less email. If you are engaging, I'm going to send you more. So, and I'm sending pretty big time splotches in between mine. On average, like the most you're going to get one, unless it's like a special one-off for an event, like a webinar, is 9 days in between it. So that's kind of like the least amount of time, unless it's something, a special offer. So less is more for me, so that's important. You go on that. We got her back here too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I read a lot of misinformation about video email.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, very. Because I've been asked to follow on, and there's another company called Viral Marketing in Canada, and they specifically use email service. And I'm doing a data from Infusionsoft that actually is a small business. They came out with me, and I've had 2 companies listening. I'll start, but here's the thing, hey, I've never known to work market at center. So as much as I'd like to do something like that, I don't need that. But video marketing, video email marketing, one of the things that the review and the new organizations are actually using, because I can bring a meeting and understanding that the servers are technically being out.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
So video and email is kind of tricky because, well, it depends if you're B2B or B2C. We're B2B, so both. A lot of people in our list use Outlook. Outlook does not render HTML5 video. I'm talking about coding your email with the video in it. So basically what you're having to do is like fake it, where you take like a screenshot of the video, put like a play button, embed an image, and then have that be a link to that's what. So what you can do is you can use HTML5 video and have like basically a backup of served up if that doesn't serve. But you're looking at a lot of like super custom code. I don't even support that. I'll support the image click, but because so many of our contacts use Outlook, various forms of Outlook, I just can't. I can't support that. If you are heavily B2C, I think you would have more success because more people are using Gmail, more people are using Apple Mail. Then you get into mobile. You have a lot of issues on mobile. I have an Android, and Android is known for being finicky for email, let alone video in email. So just be very careful. Read about which email clients and their litmus which does email testing on virtualized machines. And I'm obsessed with them. So if you're interested in email, read Litmus, like the paper on the blog. They said something like email has 15,000 or more different like versions, like email clients do. So every time you send out an email, you're not just sending it to like 4 different clients, you're sending it to 15,000 plus versions of. So that just supports my point of like, it gets difficult when you're talking about video and you're talking about something that doesn't have full support across all clients, and it has very limited support, and then you're having to do a backup, or blah, 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 and then what if you're, you know, like a lot of my prospects don't load images in email at all. They have images automatically disabled. So then they're not seeing anything. So you just have to think about these things. Test, test, test. That's what I would say.
How do you feel about running Facebook ads against
Oh, sorry, could you repeat it again?
Running.
So how do you feel about using Facebook ads against giveaways to collect emails?
I have some opinions about that.
Do you?
Yeah,
go for it.
yeah, I
You have
mean-
strong opinions.
It's a little bit like buying a list, right? Just one by one by one.
Yep.
It's you know, if you're running an ad and you're offering some, you know, a tit for tat on signing up for the email, they're going to do that thing to get whatever, you know, carrot you're dangling out there, and they're not really interested in what you're giving away, or they're interested in what you're giving away. They're not interested in what you have to say. And I think you will probably, you know, you're not going to be, you know, afoul of any of the regulations that she was talking about, but you're just as likely to, you know, run afoul of the engagement, you know, where they signed up that one time to get the thing that you wanted. They're probably never going to engage with you, you know, after that. So you're kind of just bringing on a bunch of dead weight into your email list. That's not to say that you couldn't get some valuable leads out of that, but it may be overwhelmed by the unengaged people that you think you should add to your list. So you add them to all your emails, and then your open rates go down to 5%, and you stop getting into inboxes. So I would just be careful of offering a reward for signing up if it's not directly tied to some value that your business is offering. So when people do content downloads in exchange for contact information all the time, and while that could be construed as I'm giving you this in exchange for your contact information, you can assume that if they want your content, then they're a potential customer of yours. But if you're offering I don't know what kind of incentive that you're offering or suggesting, but like if it's a $5 Amazon gift card, they're just going to do that for the gift, and then they'll be gone. I mean, that could be, because that is that's a free trial basically of your services. So in that regard, and especially if they don't, there's no skin off your back if they choose not to, take you up on that offer. And he was saying, I don't know if everybody heard, as a guitar teacher was, offering 6 months of free guitar lessons. That's a long free trial, by the way. But I think something like that is worth looking into, because that suggests that person is willing to give out their contact information they're interested in a product like what you have to offer. So it's so if that incentive is something to be redeemed with you and your business, I think that's a lot different from what I was assuming with something that's like a gift card or something like that.
Yeah, so I was thinking like a $50 Amex gift card if you sign up type deal thing. And so I think that kind of offer is like a great offer, because it definitely shows that they're interested. You're not going to sign up for a chance to win free guitar lessons unless you have some interest in guitar. So that person is somebody with interest. But where if you're just throwing out some random thing like, hey, put in your email here and you might win an Amazon Echo or anything like that, like you're just not going to get the engagement you want. It's just going to be fluff. These people are going to maybe open one email and then they're going to unsubscribe, or they're going to quit engaging, and then boom, you're going to end up in the promotional folder because of your list size of maybe 1,000 people. You got 300 through there, and 300 of them don't read your email. So that's really going to kind of ding you in the long run. But I think an offer like that is a really solid offer. So, do you have something? Yeah.
What I've noticed, I've flown before, and what I've noticed in emails that are very effective is a hook. So, be Southwest or airline. And in the header of the email, which shows up on the screen, is very enticing. Can you address that aspect of marketing and how you research what would make someone go deeper and say, well, and the follow-up to that would be, if I'm United Airlines, and I know that there are some Southwest customers, can I then find out other flyers, like trying to incentivize the fly less?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that is testing. It really is, it's what's gonna work. Like, let's try saying it this way versus let's saying it this way. And it's like, oh man, 50 more people reacted to saying it this way than not, depending on your list size. And it's like, man, that's really valuable. But yeah, that goes down to personalization. They're flying with somebody else, so why not? Don't ever attack another company, because that's just gonna end up hurting you in the long run. But you can say, hey, we know you fly with United, but get a free flight and try us. See how much better we are. It's not an attack at them. It's giving them value, and it's showing, we know this about you, so let's try and cater this message to you. It actually, research shows, and I don't even want to get to the exact percentage, but putting a subject line with a first name in it leads to like some crazy increase in opens. So, it just goes down to people like personalization. They like to think that this message was meant for only them, not your entire subscriber base. So anything you can act on like that, like knowing they use a competitor's product or knowing they shop at a competitor's store, you can really use that to your advantage as long as you don't, attack them, because no one likes someone who's attacking somebody else. It's just never cool. No one responds well to that.
Depends on how you know that information about them.
Crafting subject lines, I actually have a presentation about this. I could literally stand right here and talk to you for 45 minutes about email content. I'm not going to. If Frank wants to invite me to talk about just email content, I can. But basically what you want to do is you want to provide value. You want to be really clear, and you don't want to ramble on about something irrelevant. You want to use personalization. Test personalization. It may or may not work. I've tested it, and I've had it work really well, and I've had it tank. So it really just depends on your list, your group of people, what they want. But do not forget about the pre-header or preview text. It is something that some people forget about, and it's really, really cool because you can basically double the space you have for your subject line. And what it is if you're looking at your inbox, it's you'll see the from, like from name, like from new, or from Red Hat, and then you'll see the subject line, and then you'll see a little snippet of text that kind of is previews in your inbox, and you can customize that. Otherwise, most email clients will just pull whatever few words you have, and it's really annoying when I see things like view on web or view online, having trouble. I'm like, no, put some cool like marketing copy, be cheeky, be fun, have fun. Like, at Red Hat we have a brand voice. You have to be real careful about what you say and stuff. And I think bigger companies are like that. But if you have, if you are working freelance or if you have a small company, like play around with it, be fun. People like humor. Don't forget about being funny and being a human. Don't write like a robot. But yeah, if I ever talk about the email content best practices, you will come and you will be blown away. Not really.
Yeah.
I was going to touch on a little bit more about testing. I know that was some of the questions that we heard ahead of time. So one of the pieces of advice that I would have on testing is it's to test. Think about your tests for their long-term value. So it can be tempting to say, I've got two subject lines for this email and I don't know which one's going to be better, so let's do 50-50 split, this one versus that one. And then afterwards you say, okay, well, which one won? Great, that one won. Now what do we do with it? What do we learn from that? And so if you're going to use your email tools for testing, think about how that test will inform future campaigns. So just email A, subject line versus subject line B, that's not necessarily a valuable test unless you're testing long versus short and personalized versus non-personalized, or funny versus serious or something like that. And you do those tests kind of over and over and kind of find some trends so that if you consistently find out that my personalized emails perform better than my non-personalized ones, then you've learned something that you can use in future campaigns. But if you just have two pretty similar subject lines and test them both and find out which one won, then you're not really learning anything as a result of that. So it doesn't help you. So always kind of keep how do I use this in the future in mind if you ever do run some tests.
When you're testing that for one-off emails, or are you specifically looking at
So the question was, is that one-off or with drips? I would say both. I mean, and again, this depends on your tool and kind of how it works. In something like Marketo, you can set an individual email that's in a drip campaign that's getting sent out every day. You can set a split test within that so that as it's getting sent out to people on a daily basis, it's automatically splitting at 50-50, and then after 2 weeks we look at the results and see which one, and then we shift it over to the winner. The same concept applies, I think, whether you're sending them all at once. Some tools will have, Marketo calls this the champion challenger, where you can say, okay, I've got this email and I've got these 2 or 3 or 5 subject lines, or I want to have these 2 different versions of the email, and I'm going to send it to, say, 100 people or 1,000 people, whatever your list is. And you can set the tool to say, I want to send the split test to the initial 10% of the total list, or 20%, or whatever you decide. And then based on this criteria, if it's open rate, I want to send the remaining 90% of the people on this list the winner based on the original. So some tools can get robust like that. And you can turn every single email into a useful test where you kind of have a little guinea pig group where you test and then set it to automatically send the remaining of your list the winner of that test.
Well, and so one other thing, like she said, don't have a misleading subject line. That, for canned spam, which is North America, or the US's like spam laws, that's one of the 8 pillars right there, is do not have a misleading subject line. Because not only is it misleading, but then, so for example, your subject line is, your free ebook is now available, and then they open it up, and you're like, and we're offering a special price, $2.99 ebook. Well, you've probably just pissed off everyone who's opened that email, completely violated their trust in your brand, in you, and you spammed them. I mean, that's literally what you did by every country's spam standard. So, don't mislead people. Be as honest as you can, but still compelling them. So.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you guys also split test like plain text versus HTML? And just for like list cleanup, is it like quarterly or annually or depending on the segmentation?
Okay, so the first question is, do you split test HTML versus plain text? And I did at my old company, and I did a lot of like emails that, you're probably gonna judge me for this, but did a lot of emails that looked like they were coming from real people, but they were coming from me, Miss Marketer. And I made them look like they were coming from our sales team. But people love them, and those won overwhelmingly over the same version, like the same copy and everything, but in HTML format. And what that means is like pretty colors and pictures and the font stylized, and versus like literally just text. It looks like a letter that somebody, or an email that somebody's saying. So those always won for me. Don't be afraid to send out just text only email, like just text and a link. If your content is really relevant, especially if you're in communications or content marketing, or you're writing about things, you don't need to have pretty pictures and colors and stuff. Your message will stand on its own if it's crafted well, and then it's valuable information. So test that. I haven't done one of those tests in a while, but you would be surprised how many people have a preference. Also, when you send out a text-only email, plain text email, you don't have a lot of rendering issues. Your Outlook that defaults to images off, you don't have to worry about that. Your mobile device that likes to smush images or do weird things, you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, so I mean, email is a relational medium after all, so writing an email to look like a letter is okay. And then your second question, I forgot. Oh, list cleanup. Yeah, so at Red Hat, when you work in a large organization, you have people that do very specific work. That is not my job. Yay, because normally, at least there are a few ways that I've done it before. One of the ways is I would query our database and say, hey, give me a list of all my contacts that have not engaged. So I would define engagement. In my experience, engagement was had not opened or clicked, or can't remember if it was open or open and clicked, and not open and clicked in the last year or 18 months, something like that. And then I would basically segment those people off and I would suppress them. So I would unsubscribe them because my boss wouldn't let me. But I would basically just make the decision, like, if you have not engaged in one of my emails in a year and a half, your chances of deciding one day to engage in my emails are slim. So I did that probably once a year or so. And right now, the way it works is we run like different programs that kind of do cleanup for us. There's so many different return path type situations. Like the company that you sign up for a product. Some of them do like, they can help you add data. What is it? Data append or something like that, where like if your database is, if you're missing like the person's last name, but you have their email address, they can find that information and add it. But it costs money. So I'll let the guys speak to that.
Yeah, so one thing I do though, that after 12 months you haven't engaged, we're gonna move you to what we call inactive. And so quarterly, I'm gonna do very small batch emails to those because that, you don't wanna hit all these people who are inactive all at once. And then a lot of times, a lot of them re-engage because you kind of do like what we would like to call a wake the dead campaign, where we're just kind of trying to bring you back. But then also, we still have salespeople calling those people and one-off emailing them. Like, they're not at all out of sight, out of mind. We still have people trying to re-engage them, so.
It can be hard to take people out of your database. We've talked all along tonight about how to get people into the list, and it can be really heartbreaking to take a good chunk of that and kind of cast them off to the side. But though it might be counterintuitive, sometimes taking those people out, how do I get more clicks on my emails? Sometimes it's send less emails, which is counterintuitive, but that can be true if you are getting higher engagement, which over time will get you better inbox placement and more people will actually see that email. So it can be an exercise in the long game, but it can be beneficial. Has anybody ever heard of a honeypot in email? So going back to this deliverability kind of, a honeypot is a real email address who may be a real person who signed up for one of your emails at one point in time. But let's say I have an old Gmail account and I haven't logged into that Gmail account in 3 years. Let's say AOL, because that's a more reasonable explanation. I have an old AOL account that I haven't logged into in years. AOL knows that I am not logging into that account, and after a certain period of time, they might turn my real email address, which I still have access to, but I never do access it, into a honeypot. And so they know that anybody sending emails to that old AOL email address is not engaging with anybody's emails. So if you're still sending me emails there, they know that I'm not actually engaging with you. And so even though at one point in time that was a valid email address on your list who was somebody you were engaging with, they know that that's no longer the case. They know they're not opening your emails, and so they kind of turn those into honeypot email addresses, and those can be, spam traps for, so that's a reason, even if you've never bought a list in your entire life, your company's never bought a list, you could have somebody's in your database if you're not doing this kind of regular database cleanup. So you kind of have to set what makes sense for your own company, whether it's you do it quarterly and anybody who hasn't engaged in a year, maybe it's 18 months, maybe you do a couple of steps like, a re-engagement, wake the dead thing. But eventually, you need to stop, you need to, call it and say, I'm not going to resuscitate this lead. I agree with your boss, though, in not unsubscribing them, because unsubscribe is an action that the end user should take, and you cannot undo that action. So that if they unsubscribe from you, though, you could go into your database and unsubscribe them, that could be a potential problem. So if you unsubscribe them because they're not engaging with you, and you can't, you're walking a fine line of ever being able to re-engage with them. So if you take some other action, like in Marketo, they have a field that they call marketing suspend, or mark them as, inactive or something like that. That's a field that you designate for yourself, so you can toggle that on and have your system say, never send an email to somebody who's marked as inactive. But if they ever come back to your website, or they come to one of your trade shows or events or something, and they give you your business card, oh, well, I want to start mailing to this person again. If you've marked them as unsubscribed, then you're potentially prevented from being able to contact them. So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
One of the perks of having one mic. So we're rolling up on 8 o'clock. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. And I want to make everybody aware that you can hang out, socialize, network. There's plenty of pizza left over. And you guys will be around for questions, right?
Yeah.
Anybody's got one-on-one questions? So thank you guys very much. One more thing before we break real quick. I forgot to mention at the beginning. We do a little matchmaking kind of thing. So show of hands, who here is working for or actively looking for employees, somebody that's knows something about a job opening. Anybody know anything about job openings? Nobody knows anything about job openings. That's going to make this awkward. So I guess if you're looking for work, chat with folks around here. Maybe they just weren't forthcoming. That is it for the evening. You guys have a good one. Thank you very much.